Boston, 1920. The streets were packed with people who abandoned their jobs to wait in line for hours. They weren't waiting for food or medicine. They were waiting for one man, just to hand him all their life savings. This wasn't some apocalyptic scenario. This was a financial mania created by a single person. Every financial expert in the world knows his name today, yet his brilliant scheme was laughably simple. He never hacked banks or robbed armored trucks. He didn't need to. His weapon was an idea so compelling that people begged him to take their money. He became a millionaire in months without selling any real product or service. How did one Italian immigrant with a history of failed schemes create the most devastating financial trap in American history? And why does his namesake scam still work on people today? Like this video if you're ready to uncover the truth behind history's most famous con artist. Subscribe to System Breaks because what happened next will change how you think about money forever.
To understand the madness, you have to picture the scene. It's the summer of 1920 on School Street in Boston. It's chaos, but it's not a panic. It's a frenzy, a feeding frenzy. The police are there, but not to arrest anyone. They're there for crowd control, to hold back the thousands of people, teachers, factory workers, shopkeepers, police officers themselves, all pushing and shoving, not to get into a concert or a sporting event, but to get into a small, cramped office. Their life savings are clutched in their hands. They're not there to withdraw money. They're there to give it away. They're desperate to hand their cash over to the man inside, a man they call a genius, a wizard, a miracle worker. His name was Charles Ponzi, and in that moment, he wasn't a criminal. He was a rock star. He was the most wanted man in Boston, in the most literal sense. People were literally abandoning their jobs, leaving their shops unattended, just for a chance to get into his office and invest. Leave a comment right now with one word, what you would do if you saw a line like that today. Would you get in line or would you keep walking? Remember that answer, because behind that door, there was no complex machine, no team of brilliant traders, no secret algorithm. There was just a man, a simple idea, and a pile of cash that was about to come crashing down. This wasn't a gold rush, it was a fool's gold rush, and we're about to expose how it all began.
But before he was the king of Boston, he was a nobody. Before the suits and the adoring crowds, he was just Carlo Ponzi, a young Italian immigrant who stepped off the boat in Boston with big dreams and exactly $2.50 in his pocket. He dreamed of fortune, of respect, of being someone important. But America had different plans. He failed. Again, and again, and again. He washed dishes, he waited tables, he took any miserable job he could find, each one a stepping stone, leading nowhere. He was so desperate to make it, he went to Canada and landed a job as a bank clerk. And this is where the story gets interesting, because at that bank, he saw something. He saw his boss, a man named Zerosi, doing something brilliant and illegal. Zerosi was paying old investors with the money from new investors. A simple, beautiful, fraudulent idea. Ponzi didn't invent the scheme. He was just a student. But he was a student taking very, very good notes. He saw the power of that idea, and he saw what happened when it collapsed. Zerosi fled the country, and Ponzi, he got caught forging a check and ended up in a Canadian prison. This part is so crazy, you might want to hit that like button just to process it. The man who would later run the world's most famous financial scam started his career behind bars for a clumsy, small-time forgery. The irony is almost too perfect. This wasn't a brilliant mastermind. This was a desperate man, a failed man, a man with a history of loss, prison, and deportation. He was the last person on earth you would trust with your life savings. And that is what makes the next part of the story so unbelievable, because he was about to take that small, fraudulent idea he saw in Canada and unleash it on the world.
So how does a convicted forger, a failed clerk, a nobody, become a financial god? He doesn't invent something new. He finds an old, boring idea and makes it sound like magic. His revelation came in the form of something incredibly mundane, the international reply coupon. Stay with me, I know it sounds boring, but this is the key to everything. It was a simple piece of paper that allowed you to send a letter to another country and prepay the return postage. That's it. But Ponzi, with his mind forever shaped by that bank scam in Canada, saw something else. He saw an opportunity for arbitrage, buying low in one market and selling high in another. Here's his pitch, and it was brilliant in its simplicity. After World War I, currencies were a mess. Because of hyperinflation in places like Italy, you could buy these coupons there for extremely cheap. But in the US, they could be exchanged for stamps at their full value. So buy stacks of coupons for pennies in Europe, redeem them for dollars in America, and pocket the massive difference. He promised to turn this bureaucratic loophole into a gold mine. A 50% return in 45 days, 100% in 90 days. It wasn't gambling, he said. It was math. It was genius. And this is the most important part of any scam. It has to be just complicated enough to sound plausible, but simple enough to be exciting. People thought they were in on a brilliant secret. They weren't investing, they were discovering. If your brain is ticking right now, trying to find the flaw in his logic, leave a comment below with what you think it is. Most people at the time didn't. The beautiful, terrifying truth was this. The core idea was technically possible, but the scale he promised, it was a physical impossibility. To make the returns he promised, he would have needed to buy hundreds of millions of these coupons, the entire world's supply. But he didn't need to. He just needed the story. The secret of the little green coupons was the perfect lure, and Boston was about to take the bait.
He didn't need advertisers. He didn't need social media. Charles Ponzi had discovered the most powerful marketing engine in the world: human greed. He called his company the Securities Exchange Company, a fancy, respectable name for what was essentially a small office and a big idea. And then he let the magic happen. The first investors were his friends, his neighbors. They took a chance. And in 45 days, Ponzi handed them back 50% more than they gave him. Cash. The effect was electric. It was contagious. One person would tell their family would tell their friends would tell their coworkers. The story of the immigrant wizard who could magically double your money spread through Boston not like a rumor, like a virus. Soon, the line outside his office wasn't just a line. It was a spectacle. It was a tidal wave of hope and desperation. People mortgaged their homes. They sold their life insurance policies. They poured their entire life savings into his hands. Why? Because they saw their neighbor do it and get rich. That's the most powerful social proof there is. Ponzi understood something critical. It's not about the logic of the scheme. It's about the psychology of the crowd. He didn't sell them on postal coupons. He sold them on a dream. The dream of easy money, the dream of a better life, and the fear of missing out, the absolute terror of watching everyone else get rich without you. Think about it. If your entire neighborhood was getting rich off of one guy, could you really be the only one to say no?
Let me know in the comments. That fear is what fueled the fire. The city was drunk on the promise of easy wealth, and Charles Ponzi, the former dishwasher, the convicted forger, was now the one pouring the drinks. He was no longer a con man. He was a celebrity. And his scheme was no longer a scam. It was a phenomenon. And like any phenomenon, it was destined for a spectacular crash. From the outside, it was the greatest success story ever told. Charles Ponzi was living the dream. He moved into a mansion, wore custom-made suits, and smoked cigars wrapped in $100 bills. He bought a controlling stake in a bank, for heaven's sake. His investors were getting richer by the day. The system was working perfectly. But behind the curtain, nothing. The brutal, simple, terrifying truth was, there was no machine. The millions of dollars pouring in weren't being used to buy international reply coupons. That entire story, the clever arbitrage, the financial genius, was a beautifully crafted fiction. A legend designed to hide a very simple, very old trick. The reality was a single, endless loop. 1. Money comes in from new investor A. That money is immediately paid out to old investor B as their massive return. Investor B tells everyone they know, attracting new investors C, D, and E. Their money is used to pay investor A and attract even more people. That's it. That was the entire engine. It wasn't complex finance. It was a financial parasite, feeding on itself, growing only as long as new money arrived faster than old money needed to be paid out. If this is making your stomach drop, hit the like button. That feeling is your brain recognizing the trap. Ponzi was an investor. He was the conductor of a desperate orchestra, and the music was about to stop. The only thing holding up this entire empire was faith. And in Boston, one man was about to become a prophet of doubt.
No empire built on lies can stand forever. The weight of its own fiction always becomes too heavy. For Ponzi's scheme, the first crack came not from the police, but from the press. Enter Edward Dunn, a skeptical financial reporter for the Boston Post. He saw the lines, he heard the promises, and his journalistic spidey sense started tingling. Where was all this money actually coming from? He did the math that no desperate investor wanted to do. To generate the returns Ponzi promised, his company would need to be buying and processing over 100 million international reply coupons. But the total number in circulation worldwide was a fraction of that. It was a mathematical impossibility. The entire foundation of the scheme was a fantasy. Dunn published his findings. The article was a bomb. Suddenly, the whispers started. The doubt began to spread faster than the hype ever had. People who had been begging to get into his office now started begging to get their money out. The government finally took notice. They launched an investigation and did something brilliant. They simply audited his books. There were no complex trades, no warehouses full of coupons, just a ledger of money in and money out. A perfect map of a pyramid. This is the moment where every scam dies, when someone stops believing the story and starts checking the numbers. If you've ever doubted something everyone else believed, tell me in the comments what it was. That skepticism is your greatest defense. The crowd outside his office changed overnight. The mood shifted from euphoric greed to panicked fear. The same people who had worshipped him days before now saw him for what he was. The music was slowing down, and everyone was scrambling for a chair.
The end wasn't quiet. It was a a run on the bank. But this bank was just one man in an office, and the vault was filled with nothing but IOUs and desperation. The headlines screamed. The authorities moved in. The Boston Post ran the story that would win it a Pulitzer Prize. The mathematical impossibility was now a public fact. The faith that fueled the entire machine evaporated in an instant. Panic is a virus too, and it spreads faster than greed. The streets outside 27 School Street were now filled with the same people, but this time they weren't hopeful. They were terrified. They were furious. They weren't trying to give money. They were demanding it back. But the money was gone. It had already been paid out to earlier investors. The well was dry. On August 10, 1920, the Securities Exchange Company was shut down. Ponzi's world, built entirely on promises, dissolved into thin air. In the end, he had brought in about $15 million from investors, over $200 million today. The assets left to cover it? A pathetic fraction. Thousands of people were ruined. Life savings vanished. Dreams evaporated. All that remained was the shocking hangover of a city that had believed in a fairy tale. This is the part that gets me every time. That moment when the illusion shatters. If you're feeling that right now, hit the like button. It means you understand the stakes. He was arrested 2 days later. The wizard was exposed as a mere man, and the curtain fell on the greatest financial show on earth. The magic was gone. All that was left was the bill, and a name that would forever be synonymous with the art of the lie.
The trial was a spectacle. The sentence was 5 years in federal prison. But Ponzi's real punishment was far greater. He became a cautionary tale. His name, once whispered with reverence, was now a synonym for fraud itself. After serving his time, he was tried again at the state level and sentenced to more prison. Eventually, he was deported back to Italy, a failed, broke, and infamous man. He died penniless in a charity hospital in Brazil in 1949. The man who once held millions didn't have enough money to pay for his own funeral. But his story was far from over. In a cruel twist of irony, his name achieved the immortality he always craved. A Ponzi scheme. It entered the global lexicon. It became the official term for the very scam he didn't even invent, but perfected and popularized. Every time a financial fraud makes headlines, from Bernie Madoff to crypto scams, the ghost of Charles Ponzi is right there. His story is retold. His blueprint is exposed all over again. That's the ultimate irony, isn't it? He wanted to be famous for his genius, but he's only remembered for his failure. If you think this kind of story is important to remember, hit subscribe. We break down systems like this all the time. His legacy isn't a statue or a fortune. It's a warning. A single, powerful rule. If it sounds too good to be true, it almost certainly is. He became the permanent red flag he never meant to be.
So here's the uncomfortable truth. We like to think this is just a history lesson, that we're smarter now, that it couldn't happen to us. But it's not about intelligence, it's about psychology. Ponzi didn't hack banks, he hacked human nature. He weaponized greed, trust, and the fear of being left behind, and that code hasn't been updated in 100 years. That crypto project promising guaranteed insane returns, the investment group you found on social media that's too good to share, the same red flags are there, the same viral contagion of FOMO, the same complex story designed to hide a simple, ugly truth. Ponzi's real scheme was making people believe that normal rules didn't apply to him, and that is a spell still being cast today. Your best defense isn't a finance degree. It's skepticism. It's asking one simple question. How does this actually make money? If the answer is vague or too complex or a secret, run. If this video made you rethink how you look at opportunities, let me know in the comments. Tell me one thing you'll be more skeptical about now. That conversation is the most important part. The system didn't break in 1920. It revealed a fundamental flaw. And understanding that flaw is the only way to protect yourself from the next Charles Ponzi. Because he's already out there. He just has a different name and a different story. Subscribe to System Breaks. We break down the systems others want to keep hidden. And that's how one man's name became synonymous with financial deception. Thanks for watching. Let us know in the comments which modern opportunity you think carries the same warning signs. Remember to subscribe and hit the bell, because the next big scheme is already being built, and understanding the past is your best defense. Until the next breakdown,